Yo, what's up everybody, my name is Christopher James, and well, it's finally time for my first game review. Yeah. Finally getting around to it. Back when I was a kid, all I had to play games on was a PS2, which my sister used most of the time, and my Game Boy Advance SP, which is a minuscule amount compared to what I have nowadays. Hashtag humble brag. Out of that huge list, there is one game system that is very elusive to those who search for it. The Sega Game Gear, which is Sega's first and only handheld gaming system. Besides the Nomad, which honestly was just a 4th Genesis with a screen and worse battery eating disorder than the Game Gear. I'm not going to bore you with a history lesson on the Game Gear itself, since there are many other videos that'll do this for you. So just look at one of those if you need to, and come back here when you're done. I'll wait. Okay, you done? Then let's move on. Due to the fact that I only had a PS2 and a GBA when I was a kid, I never really got to play Mario games aside from the advanced games as well as Super Mario Bros. Super Show, meaning that I never really had a chance to be a Mario fanboy as a kid until the late 2000s when I got my first Wii in Super Mario Galaxy. Back then I was mostly playing Sonic, and if you know where I'm going with this, then you'll know that I'll be here to talk to you about a Sonic game, specifically Sonic 1 for the Game Gear. Now if you watch a specific other YouTuber, then you'll be saying,
James, you can't play this game. Johnny just reviewed it, you fake.
And while it is true that Johnny did play it, 1, who cares, and 2, I actually planned on playing this game long before I knew about him reviewing it. Anyway, enough beating around the bush. Let's move on to the game itself. Well, it's pretty much the plot of the Genesis version of Sonic 1. Dr. Robotnik has kidnapped all the animals on South Island and stuffed them into robotic suits, and Sonic must travel all over the island to free all the animals from the robotic and metal prisons and put an end to the Doctor's tyranny. The controls are simple with the D-pad to move, start button to start and pause, and 1 and 2 buttons to jump, whichever you prefer. The controls fine, but Sonic is a bit floaty, I guess. Given his controls were never perfect, but the momentum-based gameplay seemed to be an afterthought, which makes some sense given that this game had no involvement with Yuji Naka, who directed the classic Genesis games. Now let's get into the actual gameplay. We start in Green Hill Zone because why wouldn't we, and as per usual it's extremely easy. Nothing much really happens here, but we do see the first and only box with speed shoes in them. You heard that right. The only box with speed shoes in this entire Sonic game is in the first act. Now to be honest, I don't see them being very useful in any other act or zone, but still. This is a Sonic game, and one of the most common power-ups is only seen once in the entire game, making it more rare than invincibility? But I'm going off track here, so enough complaining about that. We get to the goal and we go to the special stage. Oh nice. But, where's the Chaos Emerald, you may be asking? Well, the answer is in the next act, actually. Yeah, you heard me right, there's no ring collecting to get a Chaos Emerald in this game. They're hidden throughout each of the zones. Though, with a few exceptions, hidden may not be the best word to describe it. And about those special stages. Like I said, they're not there for collecting Chaos Emeralds, of which there's 6 total, but they're used for getting extra lives, which you get for collecting 100 rings, or continues, which are in these monitors. Continues let you start from the stage you died in when you get a game over, basically. You still collect 50 rings to get to these special stages, but instead of jumping into a giant ring at the end, you would simply pass a goalpost. An exclamation point will appear, and you'll enter one after the act clear screen, and thank God. And on the subject of rings, collecting 100 of them will reset your ring counter to 0, meaning that you can't take a hit without dying anymore. And while it can be annoying, it'll hardly ever happen to you, since when you collect 100 rings, that 100th ring is almost always run out of rings, so you'll never be vulnerable. Though if you do take a hit, all your rings fly out as one uncollectible ring, which usually can screw you over, and I don't particularly like it. Later Game Gear games still do this, but you drop rings in sets instead of all at once. So anyway, we go to Act 2 and well, interesting. And then we beat it no problem, and with a Chaos Emerald. Not even joking, it's that short. Alright, boss time. Robotnik, you doing anything, or... That's it?
What?
Yeah, the bosses in this game range from piss easy to mildly obnoxious. Even the final boss is pretty easy once you get the pattern down. Pretty sad, really. Anyway, now we're in Bridge Zone, an area littered with, you guessed it, bridges, some of which fall when you stand on them. While we're here, let me harp on the screen crop for a moment. This game is actually a port of the Master System game with the same name, and the Game Gear version has screen crunch, making it slightly more difficult to see obstacles. Not as hard as other games, and it's not hard to see what's ahead of you with a few exceptions. Anyway, back to Bridge Zone. It's a pretty standard zone except for Act 2, which has the worst thing to have in a Sonic game next to slowdown. Auto-scrolling. And even though it's not too long, it's still an auto-scroller, which really breaks the pace. But we get past it, and the boss, which is considerably changed from Master Subversion, and continued Jungle Zone. You know, I noticed that all the new zones in this game have very basic names except for Skybase, which even that's pretty simple. But let's move on to Jungle Zone. This is a jungle-themed zone, obviously, and as such has several waterfalls, logs, and vines for you to jump across. There aren't that many enemies in this zone, so most of the danger here comes from the spiked rocks and the bottomless pits of watery death at the bottom of the stage. Nothing much else to say about it, so let's move on to Labyrinth Zone. It's just as you'd expect Labyrinth Zone to be, with the spears, fire traps, constant drowning, and scrambling for air, though the horrifying music letting you know you're gonna drown into place with a beeping noise. Honestly, I prefer the horrifying music. No chasing and buttoning through a tight corridor filled with traps, though. Just a slightly annoying boss similar to the one in Bridge Zone. Next up on the chopping block is Scrap Brain Zone, and thank God it isn't nearly as hard as Genesis counterpart. It's mostly just trying to figure out where the hell to go while avoiding obstacles. But again, just like its Genesis counterpart, there's no boss fight. Robotnik flies up on a platform and Sonic gives chase. Which leads to the Skybase Zone, which is the final zone Robotnik's last line of defense. It starts with a crazy difficulty spike as you need to move across several floating platforms with tons of these crystal things that shoot out lightning. It's really frustrating to move around when you don't know where the lightning will strike. And the screen crunch doesn't help much either. The second act, strangely, is the only act in this zone that takes place on the blimp itself. But god damn is that track amazing. Fast paced and just plain badass. Listen to this. Man, it's so amazing to listen to. Oh, right, the level. See, this is where the level design is most annoying. Most of the other zones had few traps that weren't enemies or spikes. Here it's nothing but obstacles. Did I mention that there's no rings here? You're avoiding so much without even a single ring to help you. And the screen crunch really doesn't help when you're trying to avoid stuff, especially the rotating turrets. This act isn't very long, only about a minute, but it manages to pack a lot of annoyance in the last emerald. My god, that emerald. It's the final emerald, mind you, and you see it pretty clearly behind these chains, but to get to it is such a pain in the neck. You have to jump onto a platform that you can't see, even if you duck. You have to take a leap of faith. I mean, really? I mean, in the Master System version, you can see it when you duck, but that's irrelevant. You have to go across a chain of these as well, while the screen moves. Yeah, did I mention that the screen moves up and down for the entire stage? No other emerald in this game was as obnoxious as this, so what's the sudden change? I mean, if you use this route, you avoid most of the obstacles, but that doesn't justify the bullshit design. But we beat the final stage, with or without the Chaos Emerald, in this case without it, and head to the final boss. Again, the final boss is pretty easy if you know the pattern, and there isn't even different music, it's just the boss theme. And then he teleports away, Sonic goes in after him, and... What? Okay. Well, after that, we go to the... Wait, that's it? No ending cutscene, not even congratulations or a try again screen with Robotnik, nothing? Just score screen, credits, and then booting us back to the title?
I feel cheated.
But if you do collect all 6 Chaos Emeralds and then beat Robotnik, Sonic does that. He walks to the left, the Chaos Emeralds fly into the sky, and the smog at the summit of the island is cleared, signifying the end of Robotnik's scheme and peace returning. Nothing else though, besides a higher score, which doesn't even matter anyway because it boots you back to the title screen with nothing different happening and doesn't even keep a high score, even acknowledge the fact that you beat the game. So yeah, that was Sonic 1 on the Game Gear. Oh boy, was it a ride. And you know, with the negative things that I've said about this game, you'd think I believe this is a bad game, right? Well, that's where you're wrong. I think this is a great game, and a great Sonic game at that. Music's really nice to listen to, Skybase and Labyrinth Zone being my personal favorites. The level design is fair with the exception of Skybase Zone 1 and 2, and everything looks really pretty from the background sprites, it all looks so good. And even with the slightly off control, it still works for this game. So overall, I think that Sonic 1 for the Game Gear is a great game, albeit flawed. So what do you guys think about this game? Do you prefer it to other Game Gear games or vice versa? Do you have a suggestion? Well, if you want me to know any of this, or anything really, then just leave a comment down below. And if you like the video and agree, then there's a like button down there for you to dash right into. If you don't, well, then the dislike button's there for pretty much opposite reason. I hope you enjoyed this 15-year-old rambling on a 20-something-year-old game, and I'll be sure to get out more of these as soon as I can. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Later.